Welcome, everyone. It's the Mike Tech Show, show number 969. Tonight, going to talk about the CLoudflare outage and what's been happening with all these outages. And I have a good timeline site for a link. And then a brief history of the spreadsheet, as I had to get Lotus 123 working on Windows 11 for a client. And then I have some listener email. So before we dig into everything, I want to thank Instant House Call for being a great sponsor of the Mike Tech Show podcast. If you are an IT professional or need to perform remote access for a client, go no further. That's it, Instant House Call. And go to miketechshow.com, click on the orange link in the show notes, and switch to Instant House Call. For your first year, it is only $47. That's an incredible price. And you get all the features that I always talk about. I use Instant House Call every day for supporting clients, and especially one-off clients where I have them download the software and just enter my email, and then they click start session and we're connected. And I have full control of their system. And then if they're a regular client, then I make them unattended for the endpoints. And you can have unlimited unattended endpoints. So check that out. That's Instant House Call. So before we get started on all the tech, just a quick couple updates, and that is just a quick update on for my wife's having the knee problem that I talked about last week. She's progressing, doing better. A little more flexibility as each day goes because of the physical therapy. Still in an incredible amount of pain, but we're keeping our fingers crossed, hoping she'll be home for Thanksgiving. Not sure. And speaking of Thanksgiving, that is next Thursday night, so there'll be no show next Thursday. So that's the 27th. So how about Saturday, 2 p.m., the 29th? I will do the next Mike Tech Show podcast. So join over the Thanksgiving Day weekend, and everybody, make sure please, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, you're in the USA, please have a happy and safe Thanksgiving for you and your family, significant others, friends. Hopefully you'll have a great, happy, and safe holiday. So I have to talk about the Cloudflare outage. But before I do that, I want to show you this link, which I found, and I love it. Love it. What a great picture where you have Azure, AWS, and then the Death Stalker pounding on the door of Cloudflare, and you can see the bloody trail from the Azure door and the AWS. Boy, does that cap what's been happening with the internet lately, as each week is a new and exciting challenge for us who are in IT support. And I do want to thank Kate for this link. I had a different link, but this one explains it. And the Cloudflare broke itself. Well, that's what usually happens with these things. They're definitely self-inflicted wounds. And a big chunk of the internet with a bad database query. And it comes down to the permissions on a file, on a database file. So, it was, again, I look at the word change. There was a change to database permissions. Why is there change without a change control? So I'm not going to go on that rant again, but it's the lack of change control that causes most outages and problems. And then, of course, when in doubt, it's DNS. But this one wasn't. This one was a database, a permissions problem on a file that it grew too big, the file, and it caused lots of problems. But here's the link. The first link in the show notes for tonight will be a description of what's going on and what happened with that. Here's how I found out. I got up in the morning and I have a sleep number bed, and I have an app on my phone that I like to see, okay, how did I sleep last night? And it gives me all my metrics and it gives me a number, and I couldn't log into the app. And I just thought, oh, there's a problem with my sleep number app, or they're having an issue. And then I found out, oh, I looked on Facebook and I just seen everybody talking about the outage, and I'm like, okay, Cloudflare. So now the next link, Internet Outages Timeline. Take a look at this, and I have some October and November, the last outages. This is great, because look at Cloudflare. You can click on it and it will tell you to explore this outage, what happened. And then remember, X was down, OpenAI, all a bunch of network paths. Learning, Cloudflare reported that the outage stemmed from a bot management configuration file that doubled in size. It has everything that you want from the outage. And a quick overview. Look how many. And then Microsoft Azure front door. Here we go. So explore the outage, read the analysis. You get to see what it impacted. And then AWS before that. And then earlier, another Microsoft outage. And then notice it's all clustered right now, a whole bunch of outages. And then we go back to July was the outage before that. And there was a Starlink. And there we go, Cloudflare again. They were down in July. Google Cloud. Now, if I was a betting man, who's next? And you know what my vote is? It's going to be GoDaddy. That's my vote. So we'll have a significant outage probably. And I remember they had a denial of service attack against their DNS servers a few years ago. And man, they just took down all the GoDaddy websites. So yeah. And Steve in the chat is correct, as he is stating, I felt that Cloudflare was more honest about their outage than other companies have been. I agree with you 100%. They were very fast in saying, we're analyzing the problem. This is it. It's on us. We're getting there. And then found the problem, and then they had to apply the fix, and then how long it would take. They were very forthcoming in what was going on. I'm going to give props to a former advertiser on the show, and they are very open about any kind of problems or outages. And that's Magnusbox, the cloud backup service. Anytime there's been a problem or an issue, and knock wood, it's been really, really good, they come forward. And they're very honest and open about reporting what's going on, what they're doing. And that's what we want. Isn't that what we want from everybody? Just be honest. Tell us the bad news. Get in front of it. So now we're not going crazy. We know, okay, these applications are down. These particular websites. So when our client base calls us and they're going crazy, we know what's going on. Communication is very important. And, this is in the corporate world. If you're in charge of an IT department and you got a problem, communicate. Be honest, communicate. I mean, there's a certain level. Transparency, that's the word. Thank you, Taz. Transparency is the word. And you know what? I'm glad Taz made a comment there, because I got to thank him for Monday night for a tremendous birthday gift. And if you follow me on Facebook and follow Michael Cooley, you'll see there was a private concert by Liz Longley for me for my 65th birthday on Monday. And I want to thank everybody for their birthday wishes, but especially Taz for arranging for Liz Longley to do a private concert. We had a tremendous time Monday night. And you can see that concert by just going to my Facebook page and Mike Tech Show and take a look. We have the link for the concert that was held, and that was great. Had a great time. But you used the right word, transparency. You want to communicate. Now, I know in the corporate world you have an outage. You could put a little spin, be honest, let them know. And I always want to hear the bad news first. You have good news and bad news. Sometimes give me the bad news. Rip that Band-Aid off. Let's get it over with. Let's get the pain, pain and suffering out of the way. So, boy, what a lesson. And I don't have an answer for the following question. What does a business do to protect yourself, to insulate yourself from an outage? It's very hard. Hey, if your website's hosted at one place, if you're big enough to have the redundancy, you should have the web load balancing across different providers. So this way one outage wouldn't take you down. Now that's expensive. So you have to have a pretty big service where you're making enough money to be able to afford that kind of an infrastructure, to be able to load balance across multiple providers. But a lot of companies can't afford that. And they're committed to Cloudflare, Microsoft, AWS, etc. And boy, when those big boys have a problem and an issue, that's it. So you got to have backup plans for yourself. What if your web infrastructure goes down? What if your app goes down? And you have to prepare for those kind of outages. And what are you telling your client base? How are you communicating that? Are you going on X? Are you going on Facebook? Or where are you going to communicate what's going on? And be honest, be upfront. That's all we can say. So I was joking about GoDaddy, and wait and you see that's going to happen next week probably. All right. So the next portion, I want to talk about spreadsheets, because I had a client last week that one of their critical applications is Lotus 123. I didn't even realize that thing was still running. And it still works. And I was a Lotus 123 guru back in the day. As a matter of fact, that's how I started in computers. And I worked for the city of Philadelphia right out of college. And they had this IBM PC computer and this box of software labeled Lotus 123. They didn't know what to do with it. And they're like, let's get the college kid. Here, you figure it out. And so I was allowed to tinker and play and learn. And it's how I got started in computers, really. I mean, really, before that, it was the TI 99.4a. I mean, I've always had an interest in computers, but it was my first IBM PC experience, and I mastered Lotus 123. As a matter of fact, I did more than master it. I don't know anybody can remember how and this is way back, they called it the artificial intelligence add-in for Lotus 123 that allowed you to issue commands in plain English instead of using the cryptic 123 commands that always began with a slash. And it was created to make formula creation easier, where you could just type it in a natural speaking language. It had great features like the undo function, the ability to search and replace in formulas, and a transcript file that recorded all the actions for an audit trail. I loved all the different add-ins for Lotus 123 and mastered it. I did spreadsheets that you didn't know you were in a spreadsheet. So how did we do this? I have a lot of links I'm going to start showing them and discussing them right now. But let's back up a little bit before we get to the Lotus 123. How about, where did it begin? And the spreadsheet, the first real spreadsheet, was VisiCalc for the Apple II computer. And I have a website called PCJ's Machines, and it's pcjs.org. You can pick the software, and it will run in a DOS window, and I'm like moving my cursor around with the arrow. As an IBM PC model 5150, it's emulating a monochrome display, and there's VisiCalc. You can actually play with the software, and there's a lot more than spreadsheets here. This link is a very cool link to explore software, and you can even go full screen. I'm not going to do it right now, and play with the software. So what about Lotus 123 Release 1A? And I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to hit a key, and there we go. And if you hit the slash key, that brings up the menu. So slash worksheet, I remember slash file save, so slash FS. Boy, this will bring up some memories for anybody that's played with 123. I started looking at this, and I was like, and then I stumbled onto this website, and I was like, wow, this is going to be cool to talk about. And you can, I don't know, show people or just play. So what do you do with all this? So it's great just for the nostalgia, but what happened? Well, I'll tell you, I belonged to a user group, the PAX, the Philadelphia Area Computer Society, for years in Philadelphia. And one of the sessions, I remember meeting Dan Bricklin. Dan Bricklin was the father of the spreadsheet. And what he did, he was sitting in a Harvard Business School watching someone as they give a lecture, and as they were changing a number, they had to go back and erase and update all the other numbers. And he's sitting there thinking, there's got to be a better way than what he was doing. And he took an Apple II and wrote the very first spreadsheet, and it was VisiCalc. Now, there's some inside info. It's funny. He was an amateur photographer at the time, and they were, of course, in the Boston area, and he was taking pictures, and he had a slideshow for his presentation. And one of the pictures in the basement of a storefront, and it was like the basement where you walk down, and in the window, a hand-painted sign, Lotus Development Corporation. And I was like, wow, that is pretty cool. So he caught the startup of Lotus Development Corporation while he was just taking pictures and everything, and VisiCalc was taken off as the spreadsheet. It really launched and helped sell the Apple II. That was one of the biggest positives. You got to have an application that's going to sell the machine. And VisiCalc sold a lot of Apple computers because it made it easy where you could change one number and all the formulas and everything linked, everything would change. So I'm going to also have a Wikipedia link that talks about, Lotus 123, and it brought up some really interesting things where it was part of that suite of software that everyone used, which was DBase and WordPerfect for the word processor, and I used to use WordPerfect. There also was Multiplan and SuperCalc. like the first competitors of VisiCalc, but it was Lotus 123 that took off and just wiped out VisiCalc. And then Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Office took over and silenced Lotus 123. So now, how do I approach getting this to work? You are going to love it. So let's take a look. The website I have here is winworldpc.com, and the product's Lotus 123. And if you take a look, you have all of the different versions and the screenshots of each one. And if you go to the last one, 9.5, which is exactly the version that my client had, went back to the old machine. We had the old machine up and the new machine, and they're in Ohio based. And so I remoted in to the old machine, seen the version that was running, and was like, okay. So now I started searching, and here you can actually, if you follow the link and click that, you can download the ISO. Now this ISO is a .7z, which is WinZip. So I unzipped this to a directory, and then that directory had another file that needed the actual ISO. So it's an ISO that's zipped. And so then I unzipped the ISO into its own directory, and I was able to successfully install Lotus 123 and bring up all the spreadsheets that were transfer. And of course, my son remotely used Fabs, working with someone locally there, to actually transfer all of the files from machine A to machine B, and it was working. So we got Lotus 123 working, and that's because it's a 32-bit app. If you go too early where it's not 32-bit, where it's 16-bit, you're going to have troubles in Windows 11. So here, I didn't even have to run in compatibility mode. It just worked. And it was just, I was very, very, very happy to get this working. So I would love to know, what are some of the old programs that you've ran into that some of the old programs that you've had to search and find? And I like talking about that, where I forget, what was it, the painting program or that picture program, where there's no way it should work with Windows 11, but doing enough searching on the internet found out the tweaks to get it working. Or I'll never forget that really expensive HP plotter that you would spend thousands for. And I remember that going to Windows 10 and there was no driver, and someone figured out how to manipulate the driver just enough so you could get that to work with Windows 10. And I was like, that was awesome. My clients really appreciate when you do that. And that's why I like sharing things like this. Like, Lotus 123 is still around, even though it's been since 1998. So we're talking, when this guy first installed this, we're talking 28 years. So, and we can still run it. So that's great. I'd love to hear stories like that. So now I figured, okay, I can't just leave it there. So we've taken this from VisiCalc to Lotus 123 to now Excel. And Excel, I use Excel, but not like I used to use 123. And I taught master classes on Lotus 123, but I've never embraced Excel to that level, because now I support so many different things, for clients. And I just personally don't have the push to learn deep down in Excel. So that made me think, well, let's get some tips to show everybody out there. So I have another link, a lot of links for tonight's show. How about from PC Mag, these 46 Pro Excel tips will transform you into a spreadsheet magician. Oh, that just a title like that just pulls you in. So this link, 46 tips. I'm not going to review them all, but just go through. You might learn something here, with this. Select everything everywhere at once. Control A. Yeah, I learned that. Paint cells to a new format. Add line breaks when wrapping text. That is cool, because when you wrap text, you need the line break. That's pretty cool. I love the adjusting to auto fit rows and columns instantly. I live using that all the time. Autofill cells, flash fill, on and on, drag data around. Something I think an advanced Excel user, pivot tables. That's something I get into when a client drags me into it, where they have some trouble with pivot tables, and I got to try to figure out what's going on, or circular reference errors, but it's fun. You should, if you use Excel, or maybe, hey, you have a client that is a big Excel user and they might benefit from that link. So share that. And I love links like that. Email me, miketechshow@gmail.com. If you want, history of computing, anything. The old software that you've had to get running, and what tricks did you have to do to get it running, and of course, tips and tricks. That's what this is about, trying to make our lives easier. So, all right, I have an email, and let me bring it up, and this is from Matt, and here we go. Greetings from tropical North Queensland in Australia. In the rainforest with the cassowaries. I'm always running one episode behind, but love the show. I find it amazing that we have the exact same problems and solutions, even way over this side of the world. Not sure if it's still relevant or not, but I had a client recently with the issue in episode 967, where Microsoft disables File Explorer Preview for downloads to block attacks. I agree with you. The preview feature is annoying and slow. Their PCs are all running 25H2, and they were insistent to get the preview working. They have a local NAS where all the scans, PDFs from the big MFP printer go to. Then they get filed accordingly to wherever they need to be. The solution for my environment was as follows. Open Control Panel, Internet Options, Security tab, select Local Intranet Zone icon, select Sites, select Advanced. In a box for add this website to the zone, I added the path file, the path file : / 10.1.1.100, and that was the NAS on the LAN. So you would just change that IP address to wherever you're trying to do that preview. This worked for me. Hope this helps somebody out. Cheers, Matt. Matt, thank you from the other side of the world. Thank you. Thanks for listening. And it's funny, I have a little following from Australia because when I started podcasting, there was a Australian podcast that we shared of the promos of our podcast. Everybody used to do a 30-second promo and send it to each other. And that's where I picked up and I started seeing, man, early on in my podcasting days, a big uptick from Australia. And it's great. And I have a bunch of listeners there, and I'm always glad to hear from you. And it's funny, thinking back in the early days of podcasting, one of the big things that everybody did, and I used to do, was play independent music. That's where all this music comes from, where I used to use GarageBand.com, and that's where I found Liz Longley years and years ago. She posted some songs on GarageBand, and she was local to Philadelphia, local person. So we love to promote independent music, and that's where that connection came from. And that's what was great. After the concert on Monday night, we had a private Zoom chat, and it was just great talking about that and hanging out. So that is it for tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Lots of links that'll be in the show notes at MikeTechShow.com. Don't forget, the YouTube video is at youtube.com/MichaelSmithMTS. Thank you. Also, for all the donations, and I know a lot of you ask not to be thanked individually. I understand that, and on the air, and I thank you. Keep them coming. The donations link is on the main website, and I really appreciate it. That's it, everybody. Have a great holiday. Stay safe. And the next show will be Saturday, November 29th. Thank you.